My name is Melissa Bischoping, and I am here for the first time in Australia from Washington, D.C., where I work for Tanium as Senior Director of Security and Product Design Research. That's a really fun way to say that I get to work on the hardest problems that our customers and our industry face, and not only build guidance that we take to the field, but also put back into our product to continue innovating and making it better. So, I asked my team before I got up on stage, I said, if I make a Seinfeld reference, will anybody in this country get it? I got a lot of problems, and you people are going to hear about them. Anybody catch that reference? See, I told you nobody would get it. All right, so in IT, we have no shortage of problems to solve. That crosses automation, that crosses operations, that crosses security, compliance, governance. Everything, every day seems to be more data, more problems. So we have to come up with solutions that scale to the problems we're facing. What I want to do is kind of take a look at the problem set, dive into a few real-world examples, and then talk about what I see as the way we're going to get ahead and take back control of the situation. So there was a study conducted here in Australia looking at IT leaders and asking them what they thought about automation and what they thought about the path forward. For me as a practitioner, the comments here on this quote didn't really surprise me, and I probably would guess that they don't surprise many of you. Anyone here shocked at the idea that practitioners feel a need to do more with less and that CIOs feel like they have to make those investments? Does that surprise anyone? Cool, didn't think so. We have to be able to buy back the time and the energy in order to preserve what is, I consider, our most valuable resource. That's the mental energy and the burnout potential that we're risking in our staff. Training engineers is expensive. Building those skill sets takes years, sometimes decades, and you have to be able to preserve it, to scale it, and to share it amongst a new generation of employees that are adopting technology at a faster rate. So all combined, we have this knowledge now that we have to be able to scale our knowledge workers and our engineers before we burn them out. Now, before we get too far into any of this, I think it's important. Words mean stuff. We're going to level set on a couple of definitions and terminology pieces that I'm going to use. Autonomous endpoint management. What do I mean when I say that? Emerging term in the industry, but typically refers to anything designed to deliver comprehensive autonomous management of endpoints, automating routine tasks, remediation, and using AI-driven insights based on real-time data. The other two definitions, often used interchangeably but do have subtle differences. Artificial intelligence, so that is the idea that a computer could emulate a human in thought and performing tasks. Now, I caution people, don't conflate AI with being human. It's not. It's software. Machine learning, this is the part that I love the most. This is the statistics. It's the technology. It's the math and the algorithms that enable systems to identify patterns, make decisions, and improve themselves through experience and data. Machine learning is really at the root of a lot of the automation and AI innovations you're seeing today, and what I consider some of the most important research being done in the field. Now, with that out of the way, I was a statistics nerd, so before I got into tech, I actually have an undergraduate degree in psychology with a minor in statistics. I thought I was going to go into research psych. Turns out that's not a very lucrative career, but played to my advantage later because psychology and security do go hand in hand. That said, let's look at a couple of statistics and numbers. Burnout. Mental health in this industry is incredibly important to me. We have invested so much in training people who are charged with protecting and keeping available the systems that enable our way of life. Your kids' school systems, finance, healthcare, the way you get to work in the morning. All of that is driven off technology systems. That means there are people required to keep it running. 69% of teams in Australia report experiencing burnout, and that should terrify every single one of us in this room. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'm assuming there's at least a handful of you in this room that have experienced it yourself and know the toll it can take not only on your work, but on your family. 75% of those workers, so almost the same amount, believe that automation is actually going to help them overcome burnout. With AI, 46.4% of venture capital funding in the United States went to AI startups last year. That's astronomical. What that shows us is that the investors also understand the capacity for this technology to change our industry and our landscape. They know that the uptick in adoption that we're seeing over just the last 18 months is only the start. Currently, less than 30% of companies are saying they're using AI for efficiency gains, but that number's on the rise year over year and is going to continue to grow. As we see on the next slide, by 2020, or on the next column, by 2029, analysts are predicting that over 50% of organizations will be using autonomous endpoint management. They recognize that in the next few years, as they go through this cycle of modernization, they have to automate these workflows. Now, when we talk about column 1, burnout, and column 3, automation is going to allow your employees to save 3 to 5 hours a week. With that time, they can go be creative. They can start taking on new projects. These are the opportunities to make yourself a leader in technology, not just someone responding to whatever the current outage of the day is, whatever the current patch cycle of the day is. I told you I was going to talk a lot about problems. So, what are we up against? It's noisy. Anybody in here ever worked in a security operations center, like as an analyst? A couple of people, show of hands. All right. It's loud. We spend so much time triaging alerts, ruling out false positives, tuning our tool set. We barely have time to do things like creative threat hunting or getting ahead of novel techniques because we're just inundated with noise. All of that is made even worse when you look at things like the constant influx of threat intelligence from different sources, having to deconflict what's useful. They even developed a whole threat intelligence quotient to say, is your threat intel feed actually good? Because there's so much noise, there's so much garbage in the data. On top of that, some of the scoring systems we're using are outdated or incomplete, and I'll dive into that a little bit further on another slide. We have limited resources. Anyone in here feel like their IT teams are perfectly staffed, perfectly funded, and perfectly tooled? Anybody? Cool, me either. We also have, and this is, I have the privilege of working with some of the largest organizations globally. Every single one of them, bullet 2, disjointed information, disjointed dashboards, siloed teams and systems. One team's working off an Excel spreadsheet of vulnerability data from 2 weeks ago. The other one's working off a report out of another tool. And they're all sitting around a table trying to decide, how do we use this information together? You're burning time. And it's time we don't have, because threats are coming at us faster than ever. Fatigue, again, goes back to the burnout problem. If your teams are so tired that all they want to do is go home at the end of the day and turn off their phone and ignore it and not answer a single other pager alarm, they're not coming to work inspired. I'm really lucky because I work for a company that has allowed me the freedom to explore the kind of cool problems that I really love to solve. And on those days when I feel just invigorated and inspired, it's crazy the stuff that comes out, the ideas that we file, the prototypes that we build. But none of that is possible if I was just triaging tickets all the time. Almost half of your IT teams spending 3 days per month just responding to errors and cleaning up and basic hygiene issues. That's a lot of time every year. That's a month every year that you're losing. So how do you get that back? I want to pivot for a second and talk kind of in a real world scenario about how we as an industry have started looking at even basic implementations of machine learning and AI to make better use of our time and better use of how we solve problems. Vuln management is near and dear to my heart. I actually, a lot of people think of the work that I do and I focus on 0 days and emerging threats, but at the end of the day, vuln management is a foundational layer of my work, because if I can get people to adopt effective vuln management strategies, the work we have to do on the big, scary emerging threats is a lot easier to tackle. So, talking about vulnerability management. When I wrote this slide at the end of 2024, we had not quite crossed the 40,000 vulnerability mark for the year. We did, in fact, cross it. I think it ended up being, somebody keep me honest, 40,006. That number is continuing to increase every year. There has not been a single year that it has gone down, and it's growing exponentially. So are we going to hit 50,000 next year? Who knows? One of the problems with this is that I talk to organizations who say, well, but we build gold images and we patch them. Cool, your gold image is outdated basically as soon as you roll it out. What are you doing to add layers of resilience onto that? How are you addressing what happens after your gold image gets deployed? The other problem that I see is in these views on what is vulnerability scoring, what is vulnerability reporting, and how is that useful to me? Vulnerability scoring, so everyone in here, are you familiar with the CVSS score? Lots of nods, everybody's seen that, how we rate them, like high, medium, critical, and you've got the score of up to 10 to help you determine whether or not this is a big, scary bug or if this is like a very small, low threat. It's a good start, and it is useful, and I use it in my prioritization, but it only tells part of the story. One of the things that CVSS score really misses is the organizational nuance of what you know about your environment and the endpoint that is affected by the vulnerability, but also how truly exploitable it is given where it might sit in your ecosystem, what firewalls it's behind, and the threat environment conditions. That I think is probably, I talk to a lot of organizations who say, I'm gonna go after all my CVSS 7 and aboves. Cool, that's good, those sound pretty scary on paper, but how many threat actors are exploiting that CVSS 7.5 in an Office application? If nobody's actually exploiting it and it hasn't been seen used in an attack in 3 years, is that the best use of your time today? Is that where you want your team focused? The bottom line is that vulnerability scanning data alone today in its current form doesn't really empower you to make the best decision on how your teams are spending their time. So, what have we done about it as an industry? Is anyone in here familiar with first.org? It's the forum for incident response and security teams. I saw a couple of hands go up. So I really love this organization because they are applying some really brilliant minds to how we solve these problems. This is an example taken from their website, and if you want to go read their paper on it, if you're into machine learning statistics, it's a great read. It's heavy, but it's a great read. Remember what I said, organizations want to go after their CVSS 7 and above. Cool, but of those 7 and above, how many are actually being exploited in the wild? Pretty small subset. So you're burning some energy on some false positives there that, while sure, maybe they look good on the report you're going to give to your board of directors at the end of the quarter, you actually haven't kept yourself any safer. And your team's exhausted. And how many other teams did they have to chase down to say, hey, can you please patch this app that you package this with? Like, it's exhausting. It doesn't breed goodwill. I want to build vulnerability management teams that can go to their counterparts and say, we've done the research and we know this is what we need from you. Help us help you. The bottom section shows a much tighter overlap when you look at exploit prediction scoring system. So that EPSS metric is a mathematical calculation on a rolling schedule that looks at predictability that this will be or has been exploited going forward 30 days. Do we expect threat actors to be targeting this vulnerability in the next 30 days? If you look at focusing on your overlap of CVSS 7.0 and above and the top 10% most likely to be exploited, all of a sudden you see that your vuln management team are spending their time a lot more wisely and your organization's safer. You're making better use of the energy, the infrastructure, and resources at your disposal. Why is that important? Well, frees up time, gets rid of burnout, and actually makes a meaningful difference in the fight that we're all up against. All of this is coming from me as a practitioner when I sat down and saw vulnerability data the very first time, my very first security job, and I was like, where do I start? This was an organization of only about 2,000 endpoints, and I had tens of thousands of vulnerabilities that I was supposed to triage and figure out what to do first. How do I make sense of that? This is how. And this is how we, as an industry of researchers and really talented minds, have said we can apply machine learning in an effective way, not as a chatbot we're bolting on top of things, but as an actual statistical observation of a good way to use our energy. So, what can we learn from this process? We need to be building proactive initiatives for resilience. And In the last few years, a lot of my talk tracks have shifted from detection and prevention, which used to be the most important buzzwords, to resilience. If you're not already compromised, it's a matter of time, and you will be. So what's your plan for being ready to recover, and how fast can you get there? And there's a lot of tools that are leveraging AI, automation, and machine learning to help us get there. One of the more recent ones that's really come to my sphere of awareness is the concept of a digital twin. Anybody in here familiar with the concept of a digital twin? Lots of people. I'm excited about these. I think this is a fascinating technology that's going to allow you to simulate how things would impact your environment without actually risking the production environment itself, with more variables and more accuracy than your very sterile test environment might. DLP classification, so your data loss prevention classification, that's really manual today, and AI is giving us a lot of opportunities to go out and proactively find that data that you want to be able to keep track of. Tabletop incident response exercises. I tell people that if you've got an incident response team, you've got a business continuity plan, you've got all that in place, but you're not practicing it, you might as well not have it because you don't know where its failure points are. There's a lot of research and emerging tool sets that are using AI to help facilitate those incident response exercises, all the way up to and including, I've talked to companies that are doing AI simulated phishing campaigns using like voice calls. It's fascinating technology. Lastly on here, and near and dear to my heart because threat hunting is my passion, machine learning is changing the game for threat hunters in this industry. At the end of the day, threat hunting is about finding your unknown unknowns and being able to bubble up those things that you would otherwise miss, the things you don't know you need to look for yet. I refer to threats in the industry as the things that are dumb, different, and dangerous in your environment. A threat actor eventually does something that doesn't match what you expect to see. Machine learning advances are making it so much easier for us as threat hunters to surface those oddities and be able to determine, is it malicious activity? Is that app just experiencing a performance bug and we actually need to go work with our ops team to correct it? I think that we are going to see the threat hunting discipline evolve at a pace that it has not been able to in its entire existence. So I talked a lot about problems. We're going to dive into solutions and what I believe you need to be focused on as you're designing solutions for how you're going to adopt these emerging technologies, because right now every vendor, every blog, every podcast is even I'm standing up here talking to you about AI. But you need to be strategic about it. Your AI strategy has to be centered on real-time visibility. Just like you don't want the GPS directions your car is giving you to be based on traffic patterns from 3 weeks ago, you don't want the observations, insights, and recommendations being given by your AI tooling to be based on stale data either. Every time a new vulnerability is announced, every time a new threat actor changes their behavior, every time a new contractor joins their laptop to your environment, risk changes. The threats change. Therefore, your decision-making process must adapt. Unified data. Like I said, we got to get away from this trend of everybody's got a different spreadsheet exported from a different tool in a different room, and they all come together on a weekly meeting and then argue about whose data's got highest fidelity. Stop that. We've got to unify our data. Save our engineers time. Let them work from a consistent data source. Optimize that data source so that they're all confident in its accuracy and reliability and can go start taking action instead of just cleaning up data. Purposefully curated. This is one of my favorite things to talk about when I talk about how you should invest in AI technology. Be deliberate and purposeful in curating a tool set that works for you. Don't just go bolt on every AI opportunity into every other tool set and workflow. What you're going to end up doing is creating more noise. You're going to end up adding more data to a team that's already burned out and that doesn't actually help them or leads them on a wild goose chase. Be deliberate. Listen to your teams, understand their pain points, let them walk you through where they need the automation, and then invest in the tools that support that. Understand the why. Not just the why of why does that tool benefit me, but why does my team need this problem solved? Is this a training problem? Is this a technology problem? Is this a data fidelity problem? And how does the tool address it? Now, I should have added at the top of this proactive initiatives in IT ops and security because I cover both on one slide. But what are we doing here? Like, how does the AI implementation really support the solution? Automate the boring stuff, title of a great book, but also the title of a philosophy. If your very expensive knowledge workers who are doing these routine tasks are doing the same thing manually, that's a bad use of your investment in your headcount. And you need to free those people up to go innovate, and you need to keep them from getting bored at their job, because bored people don't have high job satisfaction. Autonomous endpoint management specifically was built for that. And when you look at things like using AI to adapt with your change management windows, your organization's pattern of behavior, the globally distributed teams so that you're not interfering with people in different time zones, your IT operations become slightly more transparent to the end user, which breeds really good feelings, makes people feel like a partner, makes people feel so much less adversarial towards their IT and security teams, and IT becomes the facilitator of business. One of the stories that I often tell is how, as a security practitioner, I found that I got better results when I would walk up to teams and say, so, what do you do here? Tell me about your workflow. I'm just really curious. And people would start walking me through ways they used our technology. And I could say, that's really interesting. I see that you used that FTP portal from 1997 to upload those sensitive contracts to a lawyer's office. Can I show you a better way? Wish that was not a true story, but it is. Finding ways to look at those different workflows, figure out what you can automate, figure out what can go into a different tool set, consolidating them frees up time. It also alleviates risk. The last thing on that top section, patching your low-risk apps, we have this baked-in anxiety of, but if I patch Chrome, it might break something. No, guys, patch it. Patch the easy stuff. Have a rollback plan, always. Have one that can respond as fast as you broke it, always. Totally get that. But we cannot have to go do a change board for patching Chrome. The number of vulnerabilities we have to address only goes down if we can find those things that are low risk, have them classified as low risk, and be given the green light to patch it well. Early detection, proactive response. So I mentioned a little while ago about how threat hunting is really just bubbling up those unknown unknowns, detecting those deviations from baseline. In this industry, baseline is a really easy word to say and a really hard thing to do. Machine learning is making that a lot easier. And we can do that at the endpoint level. We can do that at the organization level. And we're starting to see that at the global level. Factoring that data in as a form of intelligence allows you to know when your endpoint is behaving in a way that is dumb, different, or dangerous. That intelligence-informed hunting, coupled with baseline deviation, gets you to the stuff, the living off the land techniques that keep me personally awake at night, that your EDR tools traditionally miss. Last part of that is, just like with your ops team, if your hunters have developed a really creative way to hunt for something, automate the crap out of it. Because hunters are some of the most expensive minds to be able to curate that spidey sense that they have and scale it. We have to be able to do it faster. We have to empower our junior analysts to build that skill set. Lastly, enhance your people, process, and technology. Leveraging playbooks. I'm a huge fan of building low-code, no-code playbook-style workflows because A, reduces human error, reduces fatigue, but B, it actually is a great way to grow talent. Your junior people are going to see those playbooks and go, I wonder how this works under the hood. Get curious. They've now got a pattern to work from. And you're going to start seeing your rock stars emerge from this junior pool that you can then promote up. Everybody in here is familiar with the cybersecurity skills gap. How do we solve it? It's not through, community outreach and training programs, those are all great. But getting curious people opportunities to play around and explore and understand how things work builds job satisfaction, builds their own skill set, and gets them upskilled. What are the results here? At the end of the day, teams that are empowered and teams that are appropriately resourced with the right tooling accelerate your outcomes. From the previous study, 75% of IT workers believed that they could free up time and work on projects that mattered more to them. Increased job satisfaction, better retainability. Half of them believe they could do what every CEO, CIO, CTO in this room wants done. Do more with less. Save me time, save me money, get more results. And automation can replace the work that would otherwise require expensive, odd hours, like, hey, we're gonna work on this over the weekend. You can build automation to handle so much of that with less hand-holding, less maintenance and monitoring during the actual process, which is a net gain for the business. Bottom line, lessons we learned from the EPSS example is that if you maximize efficacy by focusing on exactly what matters, using the data at your disposal, real-time intelligence, and contextualizing it into your environment, you're going to spend your time more valuably and make better use of your engineers, therefore making better use of your entire department.